Hello and welcome to our first collaborative activity video. We are team number 13 and today we're going to explore the concept of identity as we understand the depths of the topic and come up with useful actions and proposals to solve real-life problems related to identities. Identity is basically how we understand and define ourselves over time. It's not something fixed. It grows and changes as we go through life. One well-known idea breaks this growth into stages, with a key turning point where a person either builds a clear sense of who they are or ends up confused about their role in life. Researchers later broke this down further using two simple ingredients: how much someone explores different options and how much they actually commit to one. Mixing these two gives four possible paths. Some people really never explore or commit. Some people commit early without exploring, and some explore a lot without settling on anything yet. And some finally land on a strong sense of self after exploring. But identity isn't only personal, it's also social. Who we hang out with, which groups we belong to, all of that shapes how we see ourselves and how we see others too.
This is because recognitions matter a lot when it comes to building identity. Feeling accepted or rejected by the people and groups around us has a real life effect on how we see ourselves. When someone tries to belong to a group but isn't accepted, that rejection can shake their sense of identity. Several people and factors play a role here. Parents and other authority figures matter a lot, especially early on. Many people simply adopt the values and goals handed to them without questioning much. Environments like college also push people to explore who they are, since they are surrounded by new experiences and choices. On a bigger scale, society itself plays a part too. When there aren't enough opportunities or support systems to help young people become independent, it can delay their abilities to settle into a clear identity. So identity isn't built alone. It comes from a mix of personal relationships and the wider world around us.
It is known that the concept of identity and its construction are really important for every person and group of people. However, that is not always the case. There are some groups that struggle at attaining recognition of certain cultural features, which is having a struggle for recognition, and this creates a vulnerable group. One example of this here in Mexico is the indigenous people. According to the INEGI database of 2022, about 23.2 million of around 126 millions of people living in Mexico aged 3 years and above self-identify as indigenous. However, even with all of this diversity, there are still a lot of inequalities and ignorance towards this group, including characteristics such as indigenous people and communities being seen as a symbol of Mexico's past. However, currently this community is deemed with characteristics such as poor or uneducated. This isn't necessarily true. However, assigning these characteristics to them worsens the problem. For example, according to the INEGI's database of 2022, the average level of education is 6.2 years for the indigenous population aged 15 years and above, which doesn't even represent complete primary education. And specifically with indigenous women, they also face gender-based discrimination and violence. They are deemed as incompetent, submissive, or incapable of navigating the modern world. According to the Instituto Nacional de las Mujeres, around 67.6% of indigenous women have suffered from any kind of violence.
Let's talk about what this false identity actually costs people. The first one, the structural poverty. When indigenous people are labeled as poor or less capable, instead of being treated as equal, they get shut out of real opportunities, and that just ends up proving the stereotypes right. In fact, Coneval reported in 2022 that 50% of the indigenous populations live in multidimensional poverty. And for those who only speak an indigenous language, that number jumps to 87%, with 6 out of 10 of them being extreme poverty. The second one, healthcare. This false identity even follows people into hospitals and clinics. A study on indigenous youth in Oaxaca found that alcohol-related deaths were 2.5 times higher than in the non-indigenous population. And a big part of the problem is that health services often ignore their cultural background and dismiss their traditional healing practices. So this isn't just about stereotypes floating around in people's head. This false identity is directly connected to real gaps in income, education, and health.
In Mexico, false identity is a huge problem for indigenous communities. They are often seen as obdurate people, and we must take action to change this mindset. First, we can try to adapt the New Zealand 2023 educational reform, where indigenous history and cultural were mandatory for all students. I think in Mexico we could do something similar, integrating lessons about indigenous history, science, and cultural heritage, and this will truly empower these communities and show their modern value. Second, we must protect indigenous women from harmful stereotypes of being submissive or incapable. To fight this, Mexico should do something similar to Guatemala's model DEMI, that is a state organization where indigenous women provides legal and psychological support in native languages, giving them real authority and a real institutional empowerment to all of these women.